Hi, welcome to the Fire Mountain Gems and Beads Jewelry Making Studio. My name is Rose, and today I want to show you an easy way to wrap an oval-shaped cabochon using the amazing Bead Buddy Cabochon Mandrel. It's really quite easy when you use this great tool. First thing I need is some copper wire. So I've got myself some wire here. I have three 12-inch pieces of 20 gauge square copper wire. I like to use square because that gives you 4 flat sides to press down against your cabochon. Square is a great choice. Now this is a little bit crooked, a little bit wonky, so I want to straighten that out. We have 2 different kinds of straighteners. This one is great for straightening round wire, but for square wire, I don't want to press down on my corners at all. So I'm just going to use these nylon jawed pliers to straighten that out. And I just grip one end, and I gently slide that along the length to straighten it. And because it's square wire, I'm going to go 2 ways to get it as straight as I can. Doesn't have to be perfect. Then I've got my 3 12-inch pieces here, and I want them lined up. And I want to go to the 6-inch mark here. So I will actually use a ruler and a Sharpie marker to mark my 6-inch spot on there. And that's where I'm going to put my first wrap. And to keep these 3 pieces together just like that, I like to use a little piece of blue painter's tape to hold these in there temporarily. Nice and tight, one on either side. There we go. And that's where my first binding wrap is going to be, is right where that black mark is. I don't need very much. On this one, I'm going to use some sterling silver, half round wire, and I only need about 2 inches of it, so don't worry about you using expensive sterling silver with copper. And to start that wrap, I will use my bent chain nose pliers and grip it there. I'm just going to make a little bend to start it with, and note that it's not perfectly bent in half. It's a little bit offset because I want to be able to wrap. I don't want to wrap right on top of it. I'm going to wrap next to it. That little bend slips over my wire, and then I'll start wrapping. And that's important that your wraps are more, I don't know, it's more like bending the wire than like wrapping it. So I bend it over with my thumb, bend it over with my finger there, and with every bend, I like to tighten them up and make sure they're nice and secure. And then another bend, and another bend, and a little squeeze to tighten them up. One more bend, one more bend, a little squeeze to tighten them up, and one more bend. I always like to have the same wraps on every one of my wrapping places, so I put 4 wraps on the outside of my wire here, so every one of my wraps will be 4 wraps. Trim off the excess and never let that sterling silver wire go to waste. Save that into a little bowl or cup somewhere for another project. There we go. Nice and tight. Beautiful wraps. There we go. Looks great on that side. That's the important side. Now we can take this tape off. Okay, now is when I get out that Bead Buddy. I've gone ahead and measured my cabochon, and I know that it's going to fit around this circle or this oval of the mandrel. So I'm going to place that wrap in that groove that they've so kindly provided for us, and wrap the wire around. Go all the way around. And that's the size of the wrap that I'm going to need. But I want more bindings. So look at this. They've got a mark here right here for me for where I'm going to bind again. I'm going to bind there. And I'm going to bind over here on this side. Take it off the mandrel, and do exactly what you did on the bottom binding. Do it again with another little 2-inch piece, sterling silver, half round, 22 gauge wire. I make a little hook, slip it over the place where I want it to be bound, and start my wraps. Each wrap next to the initial wrap. There we go. 4 beautiful wraps on this side. And if this has gone off a little bit from where you want your space, where your black mark was, these can shift a little bit. So you can just slide those down a little bit. Make sure they're still covering your black mark. And if your black mark does show, it comes off easily with some alcohol or some, your hand sanitizer. I'm going to double check and make sure my wraps are still in the right places. So there's my initial wrap on the bottom. Still fitting into that slot. My side wrap on this side, fitting into that slot. One more side. And there's my mark. Same thing. Little 2-inch piece of sterling silver wire. There we go. Make sure they're nice and tight. And we'll check them on our mandrel. So that one's fitting neatly into that slot, the side one into that slot, and a side one into that slot right there. So we got all 3 of those done. Now it's time to do that top. This last one is probably the most difficult because this one you're going to have to wrap all 6 wires. So we got our wires going in the right direction. And from this point, we need to make a 90-degree bend right where this slot is. Ah, look how wonderfully narrow these chain nose pliers are. So I can grab all 3 wires and make a 90-degree bend. And the same thing on the other side. There we go. Grab all 3 wires and make a 90-degree bend. These all want to come together to be friends so that I can wrap them all together. Now I'm not going to take it off the mandrel this time. This time I'm going to wrap it while it's still on the mandrel. I used a 3-inch piece of sterling silver wire this time because it's a little bit bigger. It's twice as big around. And I make that first nice, tight wrap. And then keep making these wraps, getting them as tight as you can up against that copper wire. Using your chain nose pliers where needed to get that tight up against that copper wire. Wrap from the other side. And again, I had 4 wraps earlier. I could use more if I wanted to. But I think 4 wraps will hold this. Okay, I'm not going to trim those in case I want to do any more adjusting here. Okay, now to make the bail, I'm not going to use 4 of these wires. These 4 here are just going to be for fun. We'll save those for fun. And these 2, actually I'm going to make these 2, are going to be forming my bail. So just like when you're doing a wrap loop in any kind of jewelry application, you're going to start with a 90-degree bend. Start with a 90-degree bend. And I'm going to grab my beautiful Wubbers pliers. I like these because the whole length of this round is the same dimension, so I get both wires the same size. In this case, I think I want my bail, I think I want a big bail, so I can use a big chain if I wanted to. So I'm going to use this bigger side of the jaw, wrap this up and over the jaw. Then I'm going to rotate my jaw a little bit. I'm going to wrap it all the way around and to the other side. I'm going to take it off the bead buddy. There we go. And then I will take one of the wires and I'm going to wrap it around in the form of a wrapped loop. Wait, hang on. I want this one to be down, because I'm going to wrap around that wire too. There we go. Now we have the basis here for a cabochon. We've got a bail on it. Time to put the cabochon into it. Let's see. We'll look at the back first. All right, it fits lovely in there. And what holds the cabochon in place in there is going to be the wires here on the side. So I'm going to separate out, tease out, so to speak, one of the wires with a fingernail, a blade, a needle tool, anything you want. This bottom wire, just going to pull it out just a little bit. This is copper wire, it's pretty soft, so I can just use my fingernails. Just pull out that bottom wire a little bit. That's the one we're going to manipulate. Go. And I will grab it with my tool here. I'm just going to build a little bend into it to hold the cabochon in place. It's so easy. I'm doing a twisting motion to get that wire to stay there. That's the back of the cabochon, nicely tucked in there. Do the same thing on the front. Pull out a little bit of wire, just that top wire. The middle wire is going to be holding it around the middle. Just pull that top wire out a little bit. And again, you can do this any way you wanted. I'm going to twist in this manner. Twist. Twist, twist, twist. I love the way this works. And now comes the really fun part, which is all this excess wire, all this stuff. This is where you can go crazy. You can make your curlicues, you can add beads, you could weave with it, whatever you want. Make coils, spirals. This is the fun part. I'm not going to do all this for you, but I want to show you an idea. For instance, you can just swirl it around like that and then make a spiral. Here, I'll use my wubbers. This is the creative part. Just go crazy. Do what you want to do. Maybe that's all you want. Maybe you just want that. There we go. And up here, this little short piece, we'll make it into a spiral. Not only that, but this part also can hide anything you did that you don't think looks very good. This is where you get to make little bits and pieces to hide those. Now, let's trim off that little bit of silver we have here. We'll trim that off. And look at that. I'll put that spiral right in front of it. Ha ha! And you get to do that with all of these wires. Go out, have fun, play, and it's all helped out with the Bead Buddy. Thanks for joining me. I hope you have a lot of fun doing this and all the other projects that are available at firemountaingems.com. Happy beading.